All right, if you're a developer or you just work anywhere in the tech world, you've probably seen a big change on GitHub lately. Yep, that new security prompt you just can't skip. GitHub is making two-factor authentication mandatory. And today, we're going to break down exactly why they're doing it and why it's a much bigger deal than you might think.
So let's get right to it. This is the question on everybody's mind, right? You're trying to work and suddenly you're blocked until you set up two-factor authentication. And yeah, it can feel like a hassle, but trust me, there is a super critical reason for this push, and it's all about protecting the very foundation of the software that pretty much all of us use every single day.
Okay, so let's start with the new rule itself. Back in 2023, GitHub started requiring this extra layer of security for a whole bunch of its users. But for anyone who's maybe new to the term, what exactly is two-factor authentication anyway?
Well, at its core, the idea is actually really simple. 2FA just means you have to prove who you are in two different ways. First, you use something you know, which is, your password. And second, you use something you physically have, like your phone popping up a temporary code. That simple two-step process makes it so much harder for a hacker to get into your account.
Now, GitHub didn't just flip a switch for everyone at the same time. Nope, they were smart about it. They started with a phased rollout, and they targeted the accounts that have the biggest impact on the software world first. We're talking about the folks who maintain really popular open-source projects and the most active code contributors, basically the developers whose work millions of people depend on.
But to really get why securing these specific accounts is so incredibly important, we need to do a quick refresh on what GitHub actually is and how it became such a cornerstone of the entire tech industry.
So at its most basic, GitHub is a home for code. It's this massive cloud-based platform where developers can store their projects, keep track of every single little change, and work together on a team without stepping on each other's toes. And the whole thing is built on this foundational technology called Git.
And Git is the magic. The best way to think of it is as a time machine for your code. It's a version control system, which is really just a fancy way of saying it keeps a perfect record of every change ever made to a file. You made a mistake? No sweat. Git just lets you rewind back to a version that actually worked. This is what makes modern software development even possible. Git lets teams of developers work on the same project without accidentally overwriting each other's work. Plus, it creates this transparent history where you can see exactly who changed what and when they did it. It's the bedrock of how we build software today. And on GitHub, every project lives inside something called a repository, or just repo for short. Think of a repo as the project's main folder. It holds everything, all the code, all the documentation, and that super important time machine history we were just talking about. Okay, so we've got Git for tracking changes and repos for holding the projects. Now let's talk about how developers actually use these tools to build stuff together. What does the day-to-day workflow look like? A really key idea here is branching. The main branch is the official, stable, working version of the software. But let's say you want to build a new feature, like a new login page. You don't just start messing with the main version. No way. Instead, you create a separate feature branch. It's like a safe copy where you can experiment and build your new thing without any risk of breaking the main project. And as you're working on that new feature, you save your progress along the way by making commits. A commit is basically like hitting the save point in a video game. It's a checkpoint. It creates a perfect snapshot of all your files at that exact moment, so you can always go back if something goes wrong. And this all comes together in a very typical workflow. You'd create a repo, clone a copy of it down to your computer, and then create a new branch for whatever you're working on. As you code, you make commits to save your progress. Then, when you're all done, you push your branch up to GitHub and open what's called a pull request, which is basically you saying, "Hey team, my new feature is done. Can you please take a look?" And that workflow, that is what brings us full circle. Now that we understand how millions of developers are building software at GitHub every single day, we can finally connect all the dots and get back to that big question about security. So think about it. When you realize that the world's most important software, everything from the apps on your phone to the massive systems that run banks, is all built using this exact process, well, suddenly, the security of every single one of those developer accounts becomes unbelievably important.
Because here's the threat, here's the nightmare scenario. If a hacker gets control of just one key developer's account, the damage they could do is just catastrophic. They could sneak malicious code into a popular project that's used by millions. They could steal a company's most secret source code. They could set off a huge supply chain attack that disrupts businesses all over the world.
And this is the point we really have to understand. GitHub isn't just a place to store code anymore. It's become critical infrastructure. It's as fundamental to our digital world as the power grid is to our physical one. All the software we rely on, it depends on GitHub's integrity.
And that is why this mandatory 2FA is the shield. It is one of the single most effective things you can do to stop an account from being taken over. So by enforcing it, GitHub isn't just protecting one developer. They're protecting the entire open source ecosystem that really forms the backbone of the entire internet. So the next time that 2FA prompt pops up on GitHub, just remember this. You're not just adding another lock to your own digital door. You're helping reinforce the foundation of the entire digital city that we all live and work in. It's a small step for you, but it's a giant leap for the security of modern software. I'm curious, what other small security habits do you think have a massive impact? Let us know.